Really good to have you here. So you ready for a weird one? This is a truly weird one, and I did not come up with this. This is not a Rachel Maddow special. This is reported in black and white in full detail in the New York Times. I am only the messenger. All right. 1937, Amelia Earhart, pilot, first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She holds tons of records. She's a national hero. She's an inspirational figure. Amelia Earhart. She sets off in 1937 to become the first woman to fly all the way around the world. And it does not work. Her flight disappears over the South Pacific. She's never found. 1937. Fast forward 75 years. 2012. So in 2012, there's going to be, on the 75th anniversary of her effort to fly around the world, whereupon she disappeared, 75th anniversary, there's going to be a new excursion to try to find the wreckage of her plane, to try to figure out what happened to her. And an eccentric gazillionaire writes to the expedition, writes to the guy who is leading this expedition to go look for Amelia Earhart. And the gazillionaire guy says, effectively, hey, we've never met, you don't know anything about me, but I really want to come along on this mission of yours. And I will give you $1 million if you'll take me. So the guy leading this expedition is like, well, I don't know, but we really should, could sure use $1 million of this guy's dollars. This is an expensive thing. So sure, I guess you can come along. So they bring him along. And the guy who they have brought along is somebody who has had an unusual life. He grew up in fabulous wealth. His last name is Mellon with 2 L's, the banking dynasty, one of the most famous and famously wealthy families in the history of the United States. Timothy Mellon is an heir to the Mellon family fortune. He also, over the course of his life, used his share of the Mellon family fortune to found and acquire and run a whole bunch of different companies that ended up having just appalling records of the wrongful death of their workers and causing environmental disasters and falsifying their financial records, including at least one criminal conviction of one of his companies. Yeah, anyway, but the guy floats on a sea of money. He's a Mellon, right? And he has decided that he would like to spend some of that sea of money on which he floats on paying to attend the Go Find Amelia Earhart mission in 2012. And so he pays $1 million to make them take him on the mission. And here we pick up with the New York Times. Quote, the expedition failed to find Ms. Earhart's plane. But in subsequent online discussions where members of the expedition shared theories about the Earhart mystery, Mr. Mellon became increasingly fixated on video taken during a previous underwater search. He wrote hundreds of posts over many months where he claimed that he could see airline wreckage, personal effects, and eventually bodies. Others tried to explain to him that he was only seeing rocks and coral, but Mr. Mellon insisted that he could discern items that they had missed. A banjo, a severed hand, even 75-year-old rolls of toilet paper. Okay, just checking in here for a second. It's this 75 years after the... So this is literally 75 years after the plane went down. And what this dude thinks he sees is toilet paper from back then, under the sea today. Because who among us does not think if we dropped some toilet paper into the sea, it would be intact and sitting there waiting to be collected 75 years from now? I mean, in fact, if you're short on storage space in your house or your apartment, have you ever considered just storing your toilet paper under the sea, perhaps with SpongeBob? Put it in his little pineapple house. You just tuck it in there, it'll definitely still be intact and in great shape 75 years from now. Well, I would say if you did that today, this would be the year 2099. You'd be, floating your toilet paper up to use it because it would be in great shape. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, anyway, back to this. Mr. Mellon insisted he could discern items they had missed. A banjo, a severed hand, even 75-year-old rolls of toilet paper. It was apparent, he said, that the heads, meaning the anatomical head, the heads of Amelia Earhart and her navigator were encased in cellophane bags connected by a hose to a nitrogen tank, which he thinks he saw on an undersea video, even though nobody else could see it. So alongside the intact 75-year-old rolls of toilet paper, the man is convinced that he has found Amelia Earhart's head in a cellophane bag. This is strange, yes? This is strange. And so what happens next? Two things. One of them you might guess, the other one you won't. The first thing that happens is that the leader of the expedition, quote, fielding complaints from members about Mr. Mellon's outlandish ideas, eventually limited Mr. Mellon's privileges on the online forum. Meaning, you know, my dude, thank you for paying $1 million to come along while we tried to do this thing, but now I think we're maybe done with you and your insistence on the heads in a bag thing. So that's the first thing that happens. You are no longer here on our online forum. Okay, sorry. What's the second thing that happens? Mr. Mellon, again, convinced he had seen Amelia Earhart's head on the seafloor in a cellophane bag, sued the expedition, claiming his $1 million gift had been unnecessary because the expedition team already had video evidence of Earhart's plane, but did not act on it. He spent at least $150,000 on his own forensic experts trying to prove his assertions. He pursued the case all the way to an unsuccessful appeal. While a judge dismissed Mr. Mellon's claims, the case dragged on for years, which, among other things, imperiled the group's finances. So dragging this thing out for years, potentially pushing the exploration company to bankruptcy through no fault of their own, right? But he's dragging them through court because they screwed him, right? They had the evidence of the toilet paper all along, and the banjo, and the heads that no one else can see, but he can see them. Okay, so pop quiz. Which figure in this story is the single largest donor in the country to the Donald Trump and J.D. Vance campaign? If you guessed Amelia Earhart's disembodied head in a bag, I'm sorry, you're wrong. No, it's this guy. And unexpected twist, which figure in this story is the single largest donor in the country also to the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. conspiracy theories and anti-vaccine presidential campaign? Also not Amelia Earhart's disembodied head, nor the cellophane bag, nor the toilet paper rolls. Same guy. You've heard all this news about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance having all this support from, you know, Elon Musk and all these eccentric, very, very, very right-wing sort of anti-democracy billionaires, right? Actually, no, it's this guy is the biggest donor. This guy has given more to the Trump-Vance presidential effort than anyone else in the country. And he has also given more to the RFK Jr. for president effort than anyone else in the country. Both of those campaigns, him as the largest donor. And of all the weird things in this story, it is actually not all that weird that those two things go together, that Trump's biggest donor is also RFK's biggest donor. I mean, Republican political operatives are now running RFK ads in 5 swing states that call RFK a liberal and call him pro-choice, neither of which he is, but both of which are intended to siphon votes away from Harris and the Democrats by tricking people into voting for RFK instead. The RFK campaign at this point is built to help elect Donald Trump. As for Timothy Mellon, though, the I found the head of Amelia Earhart in a bag guy, he has made nearly $250 million in donations to conservative candidates and causes just in the past 4 years. He's not a long-term donor. He's not been doing this forever, but he's really doing it now. And he indeed has given $75 million to Trump and Vance and $25 million to RFK Jr., and who knows what else is coming. Mr. Mellon wrote a memoir in 2014 in which he said citizens who get help from the government, quote, are slaves of a new master, Uncle Sam. He also wrote in that memoir that in the 1980s, quote, God, can't even read this. In the 1980s, quote, black people became even more belligerent and unwilling to pitch in to improve their own situations. Even more belligerent. But that is the man who has done more, materially more, than anyone else in the United States to try to get these men back into the White House. And honestly, to get toilet paper the respect it deserves for its really surprising resilience against deep sea conditions. Admit it. You weren't giving toilet paper the credit it deserves. 75 years old, under the sea. So we are 99 days out from the presidential election. The Democrats, by the end of next week, will have officially nominated Vice President Kamala Harris as their presidential nominee, which we think means, with that timing, they're saying that she will be nominated officially by August 7th, which is next Wednesday. We think with that timing, it means that sometime just in the next few days, we're going to know who she has chosen as her running mate. Interestingly, North Carolina's Governor Roy Cooper announced tonight that he is taking himself out of consideration for that role. He's only the second person to have done that. Admiral William McRaven made a similar announcement last week. And, you know, honestly, who knows who the vice president really does have on her short list, who she really wants. This is the kind of decision, the running mate decision, is the decision that a nominee absolutely gets to make on their own. Right. So they'll get advice. Right. And they'll take advice from all sorts of different people, and they'll see how the candidates or the short list candidates make the case for themselves in the campaign trail and elsewhere. But ultimately, it's really up to her. So we shall see. Popular wisdom at this point is that this is probably a reasonable approximation of the folks who are in the running. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, maybe Michigan Senator Gary Peters, who's a sort of interesting choice being discussed of late. We'll see. Maybe there's somebody else being vetted we do not know about. I don't think anybody knew that Admiral McRaven was being vetted before he announced that he did not want to be further considered. But whoever her choice is, it's all going to happen fast now. And Democrats, getting fast out of the gate since Kamala Harris took the helm with this incredible wind in the sails in terms of volunteers and in terms of energy and in terms of fundraising and in terms of just everything coming together so fast. One of the things that Democrats have very quickly honed in on in an, I think, unexpected but pretty deeply resonant way is that there's something a little off with the other side. There's something a little weird with the Republican campaign. And I don't actually think it's personal. I don't think it is that Donald Trump is personally weird or that J.D. Vance is personally weird. It's that there is something weird about their campaign. And, weird isn't a pejorative term necessarily. Who among us isn't a little weird, right? Weird is not necessarily bad intrinsically. But in the case of the Republican presidential ticket and how they are trying to regain the White House, there is something going on that does feel off and sort of unsettling. And some of it is right on the surface, and one piece of it is deeper and darker. I mean, it's not just because their single biggest donor is a zillionaire who's convinced he found Amelia Earhart's head in a bag. And if you say otherwise, he will see you in court. There is weird stuff like that right on the surface. It's also that Trump has been pinging around in kind of an eccentric right-wing billionaire pinball machine since his campaign started. And I don't know exactly why that is, but don't forget that in addition to everything else going on for Donald Trump right now, he does owe hundreds of millions of dollars in civil fraud penalties, thanks to what he and his business got caught doing in New York State. As he embarks on yet another presidential run, a third presidential run, with that personal financial disgrace and pressure looming over him, he has gravitated more than you might even expect and more than he even has in the past to very eccentric, very right-wing billionaires, both for financial support and, interestingly, to tell him what to do, which he has then done directly to now repeatedly embarrassing effect. So, for example, Trump used to call Bitcoin and cryptocurrency a disaster waiting to happen. He said he was, quote, not a fan. He said crypto and Bitcoin were, quote, based on thin air. Well, now, after meeting with crypto lobbyists, he says he's going to make America the crypto capital of the planet. Trump was against TikTok. Trump was so against TikTok, he tried to ban it. Then he met with a billionaire who has a big stake in TikTok, and now he is a champion of TikTok. Trump promoted the right-wing boycott of Budweiser, right? Budweiser, oh, they're so left-wing, right? Which is insane in the first place. But that was a thing for the right, and Trump promoted those boycotts. Then an Anheuser-Busch lobbyist threw him a fundraiser, and Trump did a total 180. We should all be buying Budweiser now. Now it's electric vehicles. Trump has been railing against electric vehicles for years and really intensely for months now. Remember, it was part of his weird, rambling, never-ending speech at the RNC that there's an electric vehicle mandate, which there isn't. And he's going to free us from the fake electric vehicle mandate. He'll allow Americans to have gas cars again, since Joe Biden banned gas cars. Again, this is not a true thing he was saying about Joe Biden or about there being any mandate about electric cars. But he has been on this riff for months about how electric cars are terrible and he will free us from the tyranny of electric cars. Except now he's just realized that this might make for an awkward relationship with Elon Musk, who is occasionally the richest man in this country and who owns a large electric car company. Once Elon Musk reneged a few days ago on what the Wall Street Journal had said would be a $45 million a month donation pledge to Trump, Trump has now started talking about how much he loves electric vehicles, how he drives them, how they're incredible, how they're so great. And, you know, you do that once. Okay, maybe you evolved, or maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe you just got old and confused and forgot your previous stance. But it's everything now. It's on everything. Like, pick a topic. Trump takes position, meets billionaire who has opposite position. Trump then adopts opposite position. It just happens over and over and over again. Somebody should pretend to be like a billionaire who hates licorice. Right? Get Trump to meet an I hate licorice billionaire. See how long it takes for Trump to start railing about the evil of Twizzlers. Now he's gonna ban licorice, make America whatever again, right? Trump did have one very important billionaire in 2016 who he then subsequently lost. It was far-right, eccentric Silicon Valley billionaire Peter Thiel, famous for saying that everything's gone downhill since women had the right to vote and that he doesn't think freedom and democracy are compatible, and so he chooses freedom, democracy's got to go. He lost Peter Thiel after Thiel supported him in 2016. Trump is now working hard to get him back, and that has caused Trump, again, to do some weird stuff. After Thiel supported Trump in 2016, he decided he wasn't going to support politicians anymore for a while. But then in 2022, Peter Thiel changed his mind. He couldn't resist. He ran two of his own proteges for the United States Senate, J.D. Vance in Ohio, the man on your left, Blake Masters in Arizona, the man on your right. These were both proteges of Peter Thiel. These are both men who Peter Thiel sort of built out of clay. They were both given jobs by him, both made wealthy by him. He created both of their careers and adopted them both as proteges. And then Peter Thiel, in both cases, single-handedly funded a Senate campaign for each of them at the same time. He had supported Trump and Republican candidates in 2016 and then sworn off doing that, couldn't resist, got back into the game with these two guys whom he ran for Senate in 2022. And I say he ran for Senate because he personally, individually invested $15 million in each of these guys' Senate races, which is larger than any single donation ever made in any other Senate race ever by any other person. And he did it for both of them. And there's no chance either of them would have had anything remotely approaching a chance at winning either of those seats without Peter Thiel. And even still, I mean, Vance won, but barely. Now Peter Thiel has succeeded in getting him onto Trump's ticket, getting Trump to pick him as his running mate, although maybe Trump will have enough buyer's remorse that will change. I don't know. Blake Masters, even with Peter Thiel's $15 million, lost. And it isn't hard to understand why. Blake Masters really is the guy who was asked who is the most underrated thinker in America. It wasn't a multiple choice question. It was an open question. Who is the most underrated thinker in America? And his answer was the Unabomber. So no, he didn't win that Senate seat, even with Peter Thiel's $15 million. But now Blake Masters is running again. This time he's running for a seat in Congress in Arizona. And the primary is tomorrow. And here's the amazing thing. Donald Trump already has a guy in that race tomorrow. This guy's name is Abe Hamadeh. He has been part of the whole election denial thing in Arizona for Trump. He refused to recognize the results of his own last election when he lost. He's associated deeply with the whole Trump election denial thing in Arizona, with the Trump election denialist Senate candidate Kari Lake, who Trump did an event with just today. This is the Trump guy in the race. But then there's also in the same race this guy Blake Masters popping out of Peter Thiel's pocket, running in the same race, in the same primary tomorrow. And he's Peter Thiel's guy. And did I mention that Donald Trump owes hundreds of millions of dollars right now, and his whole campaign now is about doing whatever the last billionaire who spoke to him wants him to do, no matter the incoherence. Part of what's so weird about the Donald Trump campaign right now is whatever the last very rich person said in his ear, he then immediately says as if that's his new policy and always has been. But in the case of Peter Thiel, Donald Trump really does not want to lose this billionaire, right? He does not want to lose Peter Thiel. He lost him once before, and he has gone out of his way to get Peter Thiel back. He just put Peter Thiel's other repellent, bizarre protege on his ticket with him, for which he is paying dearly, because J.D. Vance, at least out of the gate, looks like a terrible running mate for Donald Trump. But even still, even after Trump did that for him, Peter Thiel isn't ponying up. He really needs this guy. So what's he going to do in this Arizona congressional race, right? What can he do? He's already got a Trump guy in the race, but Peter Thiel's got a guy there, too, who's running against him. What can Trump do? The primary is tomorrow. He has done the funniest possible thing. I am pleased to announce that both Blake Masters and Abe Hamadeh have my complete and total endorsement. Oh, the courage. He has endorsed both of these men who are running against each other. Now, to be clear, they both can't win. But one of them is the Trump guy in the race already, and one of them lives in the pants pocket of a billionaire for whom Trump will do absolutely anything. And so here, I hereby endorse both. Vote for both. May they both win, even though they're both running for the same seat. But I said there's a lot going on at the surface level in terms of donors and campaign positions and campaign strategy and the way they're behaving in public. There's a lot that is weird about this campaign thus far. But there is one last thing in terms of the weirdness of this campaign that I think is actually quite serious. You probably heard this weekend that Donald Trump told an audience on Friday night that if they vote for him this November, if he's voted back into office this November, they will never have to vote again. He told an audience on Friday to, quote, get out and vote just this time. He said after this time, quote, you won't have to do it anymore. You won't have to vote anymore. He said, quote, in 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good, and you're not going to have to vote. Now, this is not the first time Trump has told a campaign audience that they will never have to vote again once they vote him back in this time. And that is as alarming as it sounds for all the reasons that you immediately think it is, right? I mean, he's positing this like this is a happy thing. Oh, joy, never having the burden of voting again, right? The point of democracy is that we vote all the time, and we like it. That's how we decide what happens in our country. He's promising his followers that he'll end all of that. And it's exactly what you think it is. But let me also point out something more strange, which has been happening at the same time and hasn't had as much attention. The day before Trump made those remarks on Friday, he said, you're never going to have to vote again after you vote for me this one time. The day before that, on Thursday last week, he didn't say that people wouldn't have to vote anymore once he was elected this November. Now, the day before that, on Thursday, he told his supporters not that they're not going to have to vote again, but that they don't have to vote this time, that they don't need to vote for him this November.
My instruction, we don't need the votes. I have so many votes.
My instruction, we don't need the votes. I have so many votes. He said that on Thursday last week. And it turns out this is something, when you look, he says this all the time now. Watch.
My instruction, we don't need the votes. I have so many votes.
We don't need votes. I tell my people, I don't need any votes. We got all the votes we need. I don't need votes. We don't need votes. We got more votes than anybody's ever had. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes.
Don't worry about voting. Of all the weirdness around this campaign, this is a truly strange thing to tell people, right? Don't vote. I don't need your vote. I don't want your vote. I mean, all the surface level weirdness is, worth noting. Having your single biggest donor being the I have Amelia Earhart's head in a bag guy, that's a weird thing. Having a new position on literally anything you can think of as soon as any random rich guy tells you to, that's a weird thing. Picking the eccentric billionaire's intern for your running mate, even though you apparently had no idea who he was or what a disaster he is on television, all of this is weird. But telling voters, do not bother to vote for me, it doesn't matter if you do, I don't need your votes. That is a thing that should prick up your ears. Because what that means is that he doesn't think he needs to win the vote to win the election. He doesn't think he needs to win the election in order to take power. He thinks something other than votes is going to determine whether or not he gets back in the White House. At Rolling Stone today, they profile 70 different election officials who have been put into position in the swing states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, who are election denialists, committed election denialists, officials that have been put in place in all of those swing states to make sure that election results, no matter what they are, do not get certified in those states this year. Quote, at least 22 of these election officials have already refused or delayed certification processes in recent elections. According to Democratic election lawyer Mark Elias, quote, I think we are going to see mass refusals to certify the election in November. Quote, Republicans are counting on not just that they can disrupt the election in big counties, they're counting on the fact that if they don't certify in several small counties, you can't certify statewide results. 70 officials in place across just the swing states. For all the surface level weird behavior and language and strange choices and incoherence and odd donors in the Republican campaign, the serious core at the heart of it is that they are not planning on the vote being counted as normal. They are not counting on the election results being tallied as normal. They are not counting on the vote. And in fact, Trump is now repeatedly saying the vote will not matter. He doesn't even want your vote. The Republicans are counting on the election results not being certified, thereby creating chaos in Washington around the results. Just like 2020, right? Just like January 6, 2021, except this time with no Mike Pence in the way, and with Republican officials already in place in multiple states saying, yeah, you may not get any sort of official vote. The weirdness of this campaign is astonishing 99 days out. The dislocation from real campaigning, though, the dislocation from actually asking people for their votes, that means something. It means they are not trying to win this thing in a normal way. So 99 days out, as Democrats stand up what, by all accounts, looks like a juggernaut traditional campaign under Kamala Harris, are they prepared for this level of weirdness after the votes are cast? Are they ready for what's coming? More ahead.